All right, there was surprise news yesterday about one of Hollywood's best-known movie franchises. A new deal will see Amazon MGM Studios take full creative control of the James Bond series.
The news has Hollywood shaken and stirred.
I think this has come as quite a shock, really, to a lot of people. Lots of references to the industry being both shaken and stirred.
For decades, the Broccoli family has controlled all aspects of the Bond franchise.
They've handed over their license to Thrill.
Amazon bought MGM for access to the Bond franchise. It was the crown jewel of the studio.
Beg your pardon, forgot to knock.
Welcome to the CIC, initiating security clearance.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
Pussy galore.
Felix Leiter.
His name's Jaws. He kills people.
And Stavro Blofeld.
Identity confirmed.
Now, pay attention, 007.
Welcome to Central Intelligence Cinema, a podcast dedicated to spy movies and secret agent pop culture.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
You amuse me, Mr. Bond.
Do you expect me to talk?
Sorry, old man. Section 26, paragraph 5. Need to know. Sure you'll understand.
Goodbye, Mr. Bond.
Recording from an undisclosed location under a beat-up old ice shelf. It's a Central Intelligence Cinema podcast. I'm Jason Greenberg.
Wait. Hold. Okay. That is the last time I try and use AI to fill in for Jason. Anyway, hey everyone. This is in fact Ben Esslinger of the CIC. And unfortunately today, my co-pilot and friend, Jason Greenberg, is out doing personal in-depth research into a Chimera variant, if you take my meaning. So, you just got me right now. But welcome back to the CIC, the spy movie podcast that is, processing a lot of information right now. What a time. What a time to be a Bond fan, huh? But, I digress. While I generally don't entertain doing this podcast solo, in fact, to date, I've never done one, and it's because Jason is absolutely vital to the CIC's essence, wit, and charm, if you will. But I felt compelled today because of the seismic shift that has happened in the world of James Bond. Like I said, I would normally never do this. In 5 years of doing this podcast, I have never entertained the idea of doing this alone. But Jason urged me to go forward without him for the time being. But if you need Jason at the CIC, like peanut butter needs jelly, I understand. You could actually skip this and probably no harm, no foul. He will be returning very, very soon, I assure you. Please don't think Jason and I are on the skids. He just needed to step away this week, and I felt like this was too important of a topic not to cover. I mean, the only way that I would ever do this again solo, just for the record, is if Tom Cruise would have to die while doing one of his stunts. Although, God, I hope I'm not jinxing it. Tom Cruise would have to perish doing one of his crazy stunts, and at the exact same time, Jason would have to, break his leg or something and be in the hospital, and he'd be like, Ben, go on without me. Just do it. Just do it. So that would be the only other situation I can think of where I would come down here to the undisclosed location all by myself again. But I digress. And I did want to mention actually also that if you'd rather hear a more balanced round table approach to this, I had the honor once again of guesting on the James Bond and Friends podcast just a couple days ago on this topic. My thanks go out to James Page and the rest of the gang for entertaining a layman in their midst, if you will, for an hour. Anyway, if you want to check that out, I'll have a link to it in the show description for this episode. However, if you would like to go down a James Bond-shaped rabbit hole with me, let's get to it, shall we? So, as most of our 10s probably already know, last Thursday, the 20th of February, it was announced on the 007 website, and I quote, Amazon MGM Studios announces new joint venture with Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli, which is a fancy-sounding title that sounds exciting, like, oh, what new thing are there? No, it's nothing new. We then read further to get past that misleading title, and it reads, Amazon MGM Studios, Michael G. Wilson, and Barbara Broccoli today announced that they have formed a new joint venture to house the James Bond intellectual property rights, and those parties will remain co-owners of the franchise. Under the terms of the new venture, Amazon MGM Studios will gain creative control of the James Bond franchise following closing of the transaction. So there you have it, folks. From now on, going forward, after 60 plus years, Babs and Mickey G will essentially just, stop by the old Amazon office every month and collect a paycheck, and a brand new engine replace the trusty 60-something-year-old engine in the Aston Martin that is the 007 movie empire. So, yeah, big news. Nothing even comes close. I mean, it's absolutely wild. I'm kind of beside myself that this is going on. This is a thing that's happening. We're moving on from something that I've been familiar with my entire life. All of our lives, really. And before I get any further and critical, which I will, I feel it's important to note that James Bond is the reason that the CIC exists. And so I'm eternally grateful to Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman and Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson for so much incredible entertainment and joy and life and experiences that they have provided me literally since the day I was, well, okay, maybe not since I was born, but maybe you get the, maybe since I saw Roger Moore's Bond ski off a cliff and open his Union Jack parachute. And then again, when Pierce's Bond jumped off the Versailles Dam. I was also just as captivated when Daniel Craig bursted onto the screen as if he had smashed through a fresh sheet of drywall in Casino Royale. I can look back on different Bond actors and remember what phase of life I was in, where I was, what was going on. Whichever phase it was in, the Broccoli family were there as these great guardians of Bond, giving their movies what I'd like to think of as a curated touch, which was a product of building this trusted production and post-production crew that they essentially treated like family. But it does make me think of something Cubby said that Barbara herself often quoted, which was, "Don't allow temporary people to make permanent decisions." Or maybe this more to the point quote from Cubby, "Don't let other people fuck it up." Which brings us to now, and it really just makes me scratch my head and wonder what the hell happened. I mean, I get it. Let's look back. It's 1995. You've just inherited your father's empire. You're excited to make a name for yourself. So you go out there and you give it your all for 30 years. 30 years. You make GoldenEye. It's a classic by most people's estimations. You make Casino fucking Royale. 30 years of fulfilling your father's legacy and passion. But after a while, was it their passion anymore? What did Babs really want to do creatively? Was Babs tethered to Bond by guilt after a while? Did Michael tire of it all? Whatever the case might be for Cubby's successors, they carried on until reaching this brick wall with Amazon. According to the Wall Street Journal, Babs called them fucking idiots who referred to Bond as content, while one woman who was working for Amazon was literally quoted saying, "I have to be honest, I don't think James Bond is a hero," which is scary. But finally, Babs and Michael, they appear to be out of gas, out of ideas, and most tragically, out of fight. So on Thursday, they caved in the shape of
$1 billion.
That's right, a $1 billion buyout, plus a monthly paycheck for the rest of their lives, which sounds like a good deal, I guess, but why wasn't there an alternative? If Michael's son Greg wasn't the right man to take over for Eon, why didn't they move forward to vet somebody else, a worthy successor? If you know you're no longer jazzed about running your father's business, maybe find a trustworthy person to fight the corporate overlords, to keep them from mucking up the last movie IP on Earth that still has a personal touch. But I get it. I mean, it's exhausting. And $1 billion, it's a lot of money. So, also in the news regarding all this, on Saturday, there were some quotes that emerged from the great Timothy Dalton in reaction to this takeover. Quote, "I was very, very surprised and shocked," Dalton told the Radio Times. "Barbara is, I think, a fabulous woman and a wonderful producer, as well as her father, Cubby Broccoli, who I got on with very well and liked a lot. He was a very powerful and strong anchor for the project. Nothing went on that he didn't want, and it's sad that he's not with us anymore. That's all I can say. He was well in charge of the show, and that's not so anymore. I think you can read between the lines of this, what he's really saying here. But very tactful. God, we deserved more Timmy, didn't we? We really did. We really needed that third movie. But I digress. Where does that all leave us? The fans, the ones who have been waiting around for any sign of movement, some sign, black smoke coming out of the top of Pinewood, that James Bond will in fact return. We've been waiting for nearly 5 years. 5 years! And not an inkling. I mean, it's one thing to wait 5 years, but know that there's something coming down the pipeline. And then it's another thing for there to be 5 years and nothing. Nada. But, I mean, I woke up on Thursday morning and I rolled out of bed, and it was literally the first thing I saw when I opened up my phone. And my first impression of the news was like thinking about what it would be like watching an Amazon-produced Bond movie. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be something like out of the Bizarro world. Kind of like watching an AI clip on the internet that you don't realize at the beginning is AI initially, but you definitely know just there's something in your brain that knows that something is fucking off. And I'm so worried about that. I'm so worried about it being sort of this uncanny valley type of effect, to quote Mr. Phil Noble Jr., who brought it up in our other discussion. But beyond that first weird thought, I'll say that my initial feelings are a very mixed bag. Still, there is some excitement and there is some optimism, quite a bit actually, but also enough worry, dread, and trepidation to fill a Stromberg-sized submarine heater.
There's beauty. There's ugliness. And there's death.
So let's go over the good and the bad about all this. Let's shake this thing out. So I'll go with my worries first. Some are obvious, maybe others aren't so obvious, but I'll just get to it. So first, does anybody at Amazon actually get Bond? I mean, if you've watched any number of interviews with Babs, she used to talk about it all the time, being in creative meetings, saying whether something is Bond or not, something you either know or don't know instinctively after being around the franchise long enough. And my question is there anybody who's part of that team at Amazon? And God, I hope there's a team and not just one random person sitting around going, who gets Bond?
What's the one with the volcano and it splits up and a big rocket comes out? There's all chinkies jumping down. Isn't that a Thunderbolt?
No, stop getting Bond wrong!
What about the production team? Where will it be produced? Will the crew be largely British? That does matter.
Keeping the British end up, sir.
If you've watched enough Bond movies, or spy movies in general, you know when you're looking at something that's British and something that's been produced in America. There are subtle differences. There are very easily identifiable but subtle differences in those productions. And the other thing is like, these are people who have been working in the Bond franchise for years and years and years. They've all figured out their role. They've honed it. It's now become part of the DNA of this movie franchise. So to suddenly uproot all of that and bring in people, unless you're bringing in the same people, but we'll see, it's going to feel different. I mean, the UK vibe is part of the charm. I'm a Yank, but I'm also a Europhile. And so that's part of the charm of the Bond franchise. You can't go and Americanize it. There has to be that essence in there, that very British essence, or else nobody's going to get on board for it. Nobody, especially the biggest audience, which is in the UK. Secondly, does anybody at Amazon actually give a shit about Bond? And that's a big question. That's a scary question. Is there anyone who actually holds the franchise near and dear to their heart? Will they own the challenges and put their best foot forward? You know, granted, the last two movies that Babs and Michael G made, all right, well, certainly the last one, Jason would argue, if he was here, I missed you, Jason. If Jason was here, he would argue that Spectre is fine. I would venture to say that the last two movies that Babs and Michael G made were not stellar. And regardless of that, they still fought tooth and nail for the series at every turn. And commercially, they were both successes. So my question is, if the first Amazon Bond movie is a failure, who's to say that they don't just cast it off as a loss on their taxes and Bond disappears into the ether, or we're left with shit that's just on TV and not big movie things. And that kind of leads me into this next thing, is that there's this whole concern about a Disney-fication of Bond. TV spinoffs of every tertiary character and adaptation of the Moneypenny Diaries. But granted, I'd be okay with it if it starred Naomi Harris, because, well, long-time listeners of the podcast will know why. A man can dream. But do we need a series about Jaws? Do we need an adaptation of the Q Mysteries? Watch as Major Boothroyd solves crimes in the sleepy town of Wickstone-on-Water like he's Jessica Fletcher. And God help us, James Bond Jr.
James Bond! James Bond Jr. James Bond Jr. chases scum around the world.
How many weird iterations and Bond-adjacent shows do they plan to make? And won't it just water it all down until nobody gives a shit anymore? And the movies themselves no longer matter or feel like special events, which is what Bond is all about. Also, there's a very real wish fulfillment element to all of this. Every idea uttered on a discussion board and every AI picture conjured and posted on Instagram, or ideas from a podcast hosted by two dorks in a basement saying they're coming from an undisclosed location and stole their logo design. Well, you get the idea. My point is, how many of those ideas are actually worth pursuing? Do you really want Henry Cavill as Bond? Do you? Do you really want Henry Cavill as Bond right now? Some of you may be saying yes. That's fine. That's fine. Do you really want Martin Campbell back? He's already volunteered his services. I'm just saying, be careful what you wish for. Could be amazing, or do you want something thoughtful and maybe a little bit more unexpected, something that returns a pleasant surprise? Kind of like when they rolled out Casino Royale, and it was insanely good, and nobody thought it would be. Everybody was like, "What? Who is this guy?" And then it was awesome, and it is now at the top of a lot of people's Bond lists of favorites. It's mine. It's my favorite Bond movie of all time. I'm just saying that often, predictable metrics and algorithms are less satisfying than real artists curating and steering the ship in a unique and original way. So that's the bad for me. But I will say, there is some really, really great stuff that we might just have in store. First and foremost, we're going to get Bond films on a regular schedule again, which is awesome. That part, provided that they're good, it's an amazing thing to think about. Perhaps a producer, a Bond czar, if you will, who is all in for Bond. Maybe one that is willing to get out of the way occasionally and let a few big-name directors come in and do their thing. How amazing would that be to get some of those, the Nolans, the Finchers of the world, those type of directors. And it really did kind of work for Mission Impossible, barring some awkward "who as fuck" moments. Maybe we will actually get a big name casting choice that lights up the screen. And speaking of screens, it's worth mentioning that Amazon is set to add an international theatrical distribution arm to their repertoire by 2026. So there are signs that Bond could retain its big tentpole theatrical event reputation, which is kind of one of the most important things about this transition, that they get this right, that they don't treat it with the respect that it deserves, the 62-plus year reputation that it has earned. And I need to mention that what was happening with Babs and Mickey G and ballooning budgets yielding few benefits, it reminded me of sports team dynasties that, after winning it all for several years in a row, suddenly can't figure out what's going wrong. occasionally, it actually does help to bring in a new coach with fresh ideas who's maybe a bit more scrappy because they haven't been afforded every convenience, and so they make do with what they have instead of spending money on shipping ice from another fucking country just to get your scene right. I'm looking at you, No Time to Die. Imagine, if you will, an A24 indie version of Bond, just like raw and inventive and just figure shit out, maybe even on the day. I'm just saying it could be really interesting. And there are some TV ideas that wouldn't necessarily be bad. I mean, I'd watch a Felix Leiter series. That's just right there. I would even entertain an older, and it has to be for me an older leaning animated series, but I would support that idea. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'd be good to get a teen level animated series of Bond, because Lord knows we need some younger Bond fans. We need to initiate some younger Bond fans. And don't get me started about merchandising, because imagine if we got a 007 website that doesn't cater to only the 1%. Like, enough with the $3,000 backgammon boards and weird prestige line bears that look like they were made of meat, or $5,000 pens, or God knows what other overpriced collectibles that show how wildly disconnected they are with the fan base. Let's see some cool action figures and stuff that gets a new generation connected to Bond. And merch that isn't bougie $70 t-shirts or $400 powder blue jumpers from Orla Bar fucking Brown. That's cosplay. I'm sorry, it is. I'm just going to put it out there. There are like maybe 2 people on Earth who actually want that thing. And I'm sorry if I've alienated one of them. You can write us. You can write in and tell me. But what I'm trying to say, Amazon is more than well equipped to make Bond merchandising far more accessible and, quite frankly, interesting. So there's tons to be excited about. No more James Bond podcast talking about nothing is going on. I'm looking at me. But at the crux of it all, they need somebody at the center to steady this ship and get the James Bond films correct. Because without getting the films right and maintaining their status as these events and not just movies, everything else dies. But, I mean, I will remain cautiously optimistic. I'll say this, it certainly won't be boring for a while. And in the words of M,
good luck, 007. Don't cock it up.
And that's about all I got. I mean, I'm sure Jason is probably happy. He didn't have to sit here while I stood on my Apple box and got all stream-a-thoughty and probably slightly pretentious. You can write me. But rest assured, my wisecracking compatriot will be back in the undisclosed location sooner than you can say, "Who as fuck?" But hey, dear tens of listeners, what's your take on Amazon's creative takeover of James Bond? Happy, sad, indifferent? Let us know. We have all kinds of ways to get in touch. On email at cicdeaddrop@gmail.com. On Instagram at Central Intelligence Cinema, separated by underscores. It's the same thing on Threads. Or on Blue Sky at cicspypod.bsky.social. And there's a whole slew of other socials we're on, and you can find the links to all of them at the bottom of the show description of this very episode. And like I said before, I will also include the link to my appearance on the James Bond and Friends podcast, where you can hear not just me rambling on, you can hear an actual discussion between me and James Page, Phil Noble Jr., Sean Longmore, and Dr. Lisa. So please go check that out as well. But that's pretty much all I got today. You know, it's a little tough just being a one-man band. I miss my guy. But for now, I'm Ben Esslinger, and the CIC will return with more missions, more martinis, and more menches named Greenberg.